things are getting difficult. Parley, Moke. Things are getting very difficult. It seems as though nobody can afford anything. Rent went up, food went up. Fuel doesn't look like it's going back down. Everything seems to have stayed up in price and further inching higher, right? It's crazy to see this. Life used to come easy, at least when I was younger, much easier than it is now. If a lot of you, and I wish a lot of you could have felt the way that was like, back in the 90s, the mid to late 90s. I was young then. I was in my early 20s. And it's just everything came easier. Life came easier. It's not the fact that we have cell phones now and internet service and any of that. It has nothing to do with that. It's everything to do with greed. So someone's got to give, right? Someone's got to give, because there's going to get to a point where nobody can afford anything. It seems like we're right up at the cusp right now, trying to keep our head above water. When will be the point where we just say, heck with it, and just take that plunge, right? It's really hard to look at the world now and to look at the United States. And there's so many things that I realize now that I didn't realize before, because everything came easier, right? Like, why can't there be fruit trees on the street in the city? Why can't they have fruit trees? Why can't we have communal farms? And some people say, well, there's a great famine. There's no famine. We have enough food. It's so expensive. There's so many gatekeepers. All those billionaires, all they are is just gatekeeping. They're just gatekeepers. That's what they are. They're gatekeepers. And they're keeping you from being able to obtain that very necessary thing, like food, like housing, clothing, and other items that are very valuable to the sustainment of life in the States and in the West, really, because you see Europe dealing with the same thing now. Right? They're dealing with the same thing now. And we like to say that it's, just the United States. It's not. I've lived in Europe. I've got friends in Europe. I lived in the Middle East as well. Got friends there too. And it's harder for them. Also, it's harder for them there. But it's just, here in the United States, this is where we live. And we know how difficult it is here, because this is our backyard. And it's difficult because everything is expensive and your pay is not going up. And if it does go up, maybe it goes up 2%, something like that. That's not enough. Only good companies are offering that. Only good companies that really care somewhat about their people, right? They increase the pay. But, it seems like that's very few and far between now. If you want higher pay, you got to get another job. And that's it. Getting a pay rate rather than a pay raise is the easier option. Try to go to your employer and say, look, I need a pay raise. Well, I want more work out of you. Maybe if I get more work out of you, then I might put you for a pay increase. It seems like a very unfair exchange because usually what happens when they say that, they don't follow through. They find some way of not doing it, and it leaves you out in the cold, looking at everybody else, and it looks like everybody else is doing well, while you're not. But the truth be told, that they're not doing well either. There's so many people right now that aren't doing well. They're simply not doing well. And I drive down the road and I see individuals that just became homeless. You see them. You see that they've just become homeless because they look fresh. And a lot of people say, oh, these people are drug addicts and such. But that's not the case. Maybe that's the case most of the time, but we're seeing a very different dynamic these days. I see sheds out in the woods, off the side of the highway. They go out maybe like 100 meters in, and they'll build themselves a shed, and they'll live out of that. They need some kind of shelter, right? And you've got all these organizations that are supposed to be helping the homeless. Well, why do we see so many homeless people? Other people would chalk it up to the fact that they are mentally unwell. Well, I think everybody's mentally unwell because look at the state of our economy these days. The fact that you're going to stay in a job and get abused says a lot about the situation. I don't think it says a lot about you now. It can say a lot about you depending on your circumstances. If you're able to get another job, but something is inhibiting you from doing that because out of your own laziness. And I know that a lot of us want to be comfortable. We want to live comfortably, and we want to just ride easy street, and on the weekends we want to just chill because we feel that we have that right to do that, because we work so hard during the week to earn a little bit of money, and so we need to take a break. Rightfully so, I think. And then you have this kind of hustle culture that tells you, yeah, get up off your butt and start doing things. It's everything is harder, so now you got to work harder. But where's the point where it's a breaking point where you just burn out? You got to find somewhere else, something else, in some other way, some other method of doing something, of getting ahead in this world. I'm going to preach more about the PFPs: personal freedom, financial freedom, and professional freedom. I'm going to preach more about that. I'm going to do videos about that as well, on specifically that. And, personal freedom, it really starts with your mind, freeing up your mind. Once you free up your mind, then you start freeing up everything around you. Get rid of those things that are holding you back. Get rid of those things that that are like a ball and chain. A lot of people are starting to realize that all the stuff that they have accumulated over their lives is just weighing them down. But is that by design? Whatever the case might be, you need to free yourself up from it. If you have vehicles in your yard, whatever. If you have a lot of stuff in your house, if you have houses, and it can hold you back. If you have a car that you're paying for, maybe you're upside down on that car. I saw a video from an individual. He got a lot of speeding tickets, and he's got a car, a 2024 newer car, and he's not going to be able to drive. Well, what's the sense of having that vehicle? So he's wondering what to do about that because he's upside down on it. There's no easy solution to that, right? There's no easy solution to that at all. And he's thinking about moving somewhere, but he doesn't know where. A lot of people are stuck. They find themselves breaking out and having some success, but then, look, you're going to get stuck sometimes. A lot of people are going through that. They've had some great success, but the economy changed. everything's changed, and it seems as though that the people who are driving this bus keep on doing things and charging more for that ride, and we're along the ride with everybody. We're the passengers, essentially. We're the passengers. I saw a movie, I forget what it was called, maybe you've seen it as well, where it was post-apocalyptic, and they're all on a train going across the world on this train, and there are people that they get their little brick of food or something like that, and it's just like a gel a gel of protein, and really what it was is crickets, right? And the people who were in control, there was a class system on the bus. So these people said, no, we want to go to the front of the bus. The front of the train. So they pushed the way to the front of the train, and it was a weak person. It was a weak old man, I think, without any power other than the fact that the power that the elites on the train gave this person. You know, it was a while ago when I seen this video. This movie. But it just, that's the way it is here. You know, you have a few families that are at the top of the food chain, and the only power that they have is the power that we give them, and you got to realize that. You know, so that personal freedom is very important. You know, setting yourself up. You know, it's not something that you say, oh, I achieved personal freedom, now let's go to the next. Financial freedom. No, this all runs in together. You know, and you're constantly checking up on it. You're constantly evaluating it. You know, in every decision that you make, it's like, okay, is this going to interfere with my personal freedom? You know, and that's after you've assessed where your freedom is. You know, how free you are to how you want to live your life, or to the limited control that you want the system to have on you. Like I said in, you know, previous videos, those people that say they want to break away from the matrix, quote unquote, and they go off, they buy a plot of land maybe for $11,000, $20,000, $30,000, and then they build their house completely off the grid, you know, and they live, you know, on their own terms. You know, they have to assess their freedom too. How is this going to, you know, impede on my freedom? You know, how I want to live as a person. How is this going to, you know, play into that? And you have a lot of, you know, various different things that could impede on that. And it feels like the system slowly tries to creep back into your life. And I think it's by design, right? I really do. You know, the system slowly tries to creep back in your life and get you hooked. So, what do you do about that? What do you do about that? Well, just like I said, you have to keep on reassessing if it's going to, you know, move into your way of life and inhibit you from living that free life away from the system. It could be a service. It could be solar panels. Hey, by the way, we're offering free solar panels. You ever get those? We got free solar panels. And I say nothing's free. Well, you're going to save money over 30 years. Maybe after the 30-year mark, I'll start saving money. You know, there are a lot of things that they don't tell you. But there are a lot of government programs that they take advantage of, that you can actually take advantage of. So I hear. I haven't used that yet. And I'm not particularly one that likes the idea of solar panels either. I think they're great in tandem with other ways to develop your own electricity, right? It's all one big lie, okay? It's all one big lie. They lie to you consistently over and over and over again. And they lie to you to get you in, to get you sucked in. And now once they get you sucked in, they've got leverage over you. You know, all these different ideas that they have. And it seems really great. And they make it sound good. See, that's where you have to be very, very cautious when they make it sound good. You have to read the fine print too. Because they're going to put you in a situation where, oh yeah, just sign here and there and there. No, don't just sign here, there, and there. Read the contract. And I have a rule of thumb. If it's over a few paragraphs, it's not worth a damn. So don't even, I mean, if it's not simple to read, then do not sign that piece of paper. Because there's double wording in there. And it's just all leveraged against you for them. All right? And you're going to get suckered in. Invest in yourself. Don't invest into anybody else's program. Especially when they make it sound very complicated. And you don't really understand it. If you don't understand it, like even a 401k, if you don't understand the 401k, do not invest in it. You need to understand where you're putting your money into. You know, that's free advice right there. So, that would be personal freedom. That would be the idea of personal freedom. You know, being self-aware, understanding things before you engage in them. All right? Making sure that it's not leveraged against you. Making sure that you pick up your life around you and all the mess you cause. Because we just go through life and we make mess. Right? Really, we go to the grocery store, we cook, we create trash. You've got to organize all those things. You have to organize it. And you have to have a system, your own system in dealing with it. And that's really what that is participating in your own life. It's participating in your own life. A lot of people don't think about it that way. But you're actually engaging in yourself. You're actually making sure that you're able to, you know, do things spontaneously. Why? Because you don't have a lot of mess around you. You know, your room's picked up. Your laundry, your clean laundry is folded and the dirty laundry is in a hamper. And you have days to where you do the laundry and you have a system going. You know, a system going so you can engage in your own life, taking care of yourself. And a lot of people that have a lot of money, they don't do that. They hire somebody else to do it for them. And yeah, it streamlines their life, but one thing that they're not engaged in is themselves. You know, we have a habit of just jumping in the shower, taking a shower, getting out, you know, drying ourselves off, putting on our clean clothes and leaving our dirty clothes on the floor. And it's just, everything's haphazard. You know, have an organized fashion of living. That's personal freedom. That's going to create personal freedom. You know, that's going to streamline your life. And it's going to help you engage with yourself in being, you know, having that relationship with yourself. Like taking a shower. You have a process for taking a shower. You know, what I like to do is I like to turn on the shower, get myself wet, turn it off, you know, lather myself up, you know, really engage in myself and take care of all my parts in my body, you know. And when I go number 2, I have a process for that too. And I like to clean myself. I like to clean myself with water. I make sure I clean myself with water so I'm well taken care of. You know, it's a little extra work, but I'm engaging in myself. I'm engaging with, my hygiene. Just something as simple as that, engaging in, my car, my truck ends up getting messy. So what do I have to do? I have to clean it. I have to find time to clean it and have the discipline to maintain it. It's not so easy, but there's a process, and you're engaging in your own life. The reason why there are so many people who are hoarders is because, they are not at one with themselves. They don't have that self-love. They don't have that personal relationship with themselves. And they're looking to the outside for fulfillment, taking things from outside and, hoarding them, hoarding stuff. That ends up becoming rubbish, and their life ends up, their inside is a reflection of their outside. And we don't look at it that way. We look at it and we tend to look down on individuals like that. And the only thing that happens as a result of that is their situation gets worse. It's a terrible thing. But this is the society that we created. This is a society that we have allowed to be created. Because the people who design the system have something that we want. These pieces of paper that don't have any intrinsic worth in and of themselves other than the worth that they are saying that it has. And we treat it as worth. We treat it as gold, right? And we chase after it day after day. And what you need to realize is this is energy. This is a representation of your energy in a piece of paper in increments of time based off of the skill level that you and your employer agree upon. That's all. Oh, you're only worth this. Okay. So you're saying that you're worth that. You have no room to complain then. If you want higher pay, negotiate with your employer. If that's unsatisfactory, go find another job. It's not easy, is it? Especially these days. But if that's what you want, that's what you're going to have to do. Quit saying that it's so hard and just get it done any way that you can. I know it sounds easier than it is, but you're going to have to do the tough work. You tried this life, even if you have to go to a different place to go negotiate a better raise, more money. Or you can take the alternative route, which is working for yourself. And I think that a lot of people, if they resign themselves to working for themselves, they'll find that life is a bit more fruitful. Take me, for instance. I was looking at what my company makes from me. And it's a hell of a lot of money than they were paying me. And I thought to myself, well, I could do a better job. I could do a much better job than they are, utilizing me, and I'm only getting paid per hour. So what do you have to do in that instance? Work for yourself. Or get to the point where learn everything that your employer does. Luckily, I was able to do that. And I'm able to do that looking at opening and closing work orders and everything like that, giving the customer a price and things of that nature. And once you do that, and then, having a metric of how good you're doing, the percentile, how much money that you're making, your company that you're working for every month, and there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely do that. That's a great method in order to be able to break out of what you are in right now. If you are in a situation where you need to make more money and you want more out of life, well, start paying attention to what you're doing every day at the workplace and learn as much as you can learn in that industry. And then when it comes time to go to your employer and say, look, I'm going to start doing this for my, or don't even say that. Say, look, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice, And I would suggest getting a customer base outside of what your company has, So you don't get taken to court. I hate seeing people get taken to court because a lot of people, they become entrepreneurs and they take the customers with them. But if you can do that legally, then go ahead, by all means, do that. I think that your employer should have taken care of you better. And, they can only take care of you so much where they're looking at their annual profits and losses. And they want their profits, of course. But you have to realize that freedom, in order to obtain true freedom in this society, guys, you've got to be an entrepreneur. Or, if you can get an employer that's going to, that's going to respect your freedom, then by all means, and you're giving you total autonomy to do the job, and that's all well and good, as long as they're paying you good. As long as they're paying you a very good livable wage, and I'm not saying on the cusp of, poverty, which a lot of employers seem to not realize, is that if they pay their employer better, if they treat their employees better, they're going to have longevity out of them. If they respect their employees and their lives and the human condition, they'll get better employees and they'll get better work out of them too. I've worked in Europe, in the United States Army. I was stationed in Europe with NATO. I was an international soldier for a number of years. And just the way that they were in Europe, I really thought that was nice. It's because life was very important to them, and being able to live life. And you were your first name first. And people treated each other like human beings. Like in the morning, everybody would, at the coffee bar, at the tea bar, we had a tea bar. You go to the tea bar and you would shake hands with everybody and greet them good morning. Something that we don't really do here in the United States. But that is a very, very important custom to them. Respect was very important. I couldn't go to somebody who was a lower rank than me and say, do this. No, I had to ask them, hey, look, I need you to do this. Could you please do this for me? I'd appreciate it. I need somebody, and I think that you'd be perfect for the job. You know what I mean? I'll do this for you if you do this for me. There's a reciprocity here. There's an exchange. And I think that's very important. A lot of people don't think so, but I think it is. It's very important. Very important. And of course, when we went to combat, it was quite different. It was, I need you to do that. I need you to, man that crew serve weapon. It's like, yeah, you want to live? Everybody wants to live, so yeah, you're going to man that crew serve weapon. What that is a heavy machine gun or something along that line, like a 50 caliber, or a Mark 19. Mark 19, it's a machine gun that shoots grenades, that kind of thing. Yeah, just trying to explain it to you on civilian terms. I know it's quite difficult. Sometimes I want to speak in military terminology. I've done that for a number of years. I'm not in the military now, so I just want to live that civilian life. I've I've earned that. I've earned that much. I went to war for a number of years, and looking at the state of the United States now, if you gave me an option, go back to war or stay here, I would be tempted to go back to a combat zone, to go deploy again. The reason why is, people aren't trying to screw each other over, like they do in the United States. I'm not saying that people don't try to screw each other over in the military, because it happens a lot, but you're not trying to really do somebody in and take whatever you can out of them, because you need them for tomorrow in case you have a mission that just came up. You want the best people, or that you could possibly get, especially when there's different skills that people have and that they're known for having. And that's why it's so dynamic and unique, because everybody has their different niche. Even in the military, you have your different niche. Like, oh, that guy is good at close quarters. Oh, he's a great sniper. I want that guy. He's a little bit of a jerk, but when it comes down to it, he can knock some targets down. So yeah, I want that guy. Here it doesn't matter. Here in the States, it doesn't matter. People will try to take advantage of you any way that they can for their personal gain. It's like a big bucket, and we're all just crabs in a bucket. One person gets up to the rim of the bucket, and another one pulls them down. And it seems to be legal to screw people over. There are loopholes that they use to screw other people over. It's terrible. It's terrible, absolutely terrible. But I think that plays into people's PTSD when they come back to the United States and they realize that America is run off of people getting screwed, right? Like, we're the fuel for this machine, right? Just like a train going down the tracks, and the coal was the fuel, and you just shovel the coal into the fire. Well, instead of that coal, we are the fuel, and they're just shoveling us into the fire. And I think that plays in a lot of people's PTSD, and they find out that they're not of this world, and they don't want any part of this machine that screws people over, because all they did was they wanted to go off to combat because they believed in their country and they're very patriotic. And they come back to the United States where, the whole system is designed against them. And in the military, the system was designed for them to succeed and to be able to, climb up the ladder based off of merit and achievement. If they achieve this, then they'll get recognized. And then they go into the civilian world where none of that ever matters. None of that matters. And they try to achieve the goals in the civilian world, and they find out that they're not recognized for that good deed that they have done. And it's crazy. So I think that discourages a lot of veterans. And that's why you see a lot of them, offing themselves, unfortunately deleting. And it's very, very depressing. And it seems as though the system was designed for that to happen, because they don't want them relying on the system and taking money from the system. And one thing that I see that I don't like is all these people that just want to live their lives and they want to make a living for themselves and carve out an existence. and be able to be prosperous and fruitful. And what ends up happening is they get, they get discouraged from doing that. Like it's some kind of virtue to work long hours and not rely on the system in any way. And I get it. That does seem nice. We all pay our taxes. But we have to have a bit of humanity too. So this new administration, what did they do? They went after the workers. I don't see any politicians going to prison, losing their jobs and everything like that. I don't see many of them at all doing that. It's not like this individual, this president is going after the swamp. And he was cleaning out the public sector government jobs. He was going after fraud of the regular person. Fraud of the regular person. And so many regular people got screwed. This is not a political channel, but look, this is what it is. I don't see many people at the top, getting held accountable so much and then losing their jobs. Well, it's harder. It's harder to get them out of their position. I don't agree to that. All that red tape and stuff. No. I see that it is one-sided. There are rules for thee and none for thee. If this individual proves otherwise, so many people voted for, the president. So many people voted for him, and they still. I hear people keep on saying, "Look, you just gotta wait." There's a process to all of this. Then I see more homeless people when I drive down the street. I see new faces under the bridge. That's my experience. I have my opinion based off of ground level. What's going on the ground. That's where I'm basing, my opinion. All right. And call it what you will. I'm not a leftist. I'm not a righty. I'm just me. I'm just a United States Army combat veteran. Non-commissioned officer type. And that's, I served my country and I love my country. I don't agree with the government. I don't agree with what they're doing. I think a lot of the things that they were doing is egregious. I'm not in agreement with the last administration either, to tell you the truth. I'm just sick of the whole damn thing. Just seeing my countrymen get taken advantage of every day, day in, day out. Right? So financial freedom also, living in a certain way where you don't have a lot of debt. You have limited overhead. Okay? Limited overhead. That's very important for your freedom. It's very important. It's vitally important. You had a whole system, a whole economic system here in the United States focused around debt. It's normalized. Getting a mortgage is normalized. Buying a car, financing the car with the bank's money is normalized. Yeah? And even getting furniture for your house, your apartment, or whatever, and putting that on credit, normalized. Financing your furniture, financing your car, financing your house, all that. It's just normal. It was normal for a lot of years. Now it's not so normal anymore. Why? Because people can't afford to do that. Banks aren't giving out great interest rates at all. And people, they weren't paying attention to that, but now they are. Because we had so many people get bit by that Very same system. They tried it because that's the way they grew up. That's what they know. So they were living life that way. It was just a way of life. Now people are realizing that that doesn't serve them at all because they saw their neighbors down the street get their houses foreclosed on, and they seen their neighbors down the street, their cars got hauled away by the tow truck, by the repo man, and they're saying, "Oh, what happened?" You know, because you lose your job. You lose your job. Now you can't pay for your car or your house. So what happens? They take it. They take it. It wasn't yours in the first place. You had an agreement with your bank, with the banks that funded these things. You weren't able to pay. They paid. They took it back. Plain and simple. Even when you own something, and I own everything that I have, I don't have anything financed. To tell you the truth, guys, a lot of people, they get their mortgages, they pay for their cars, they finance their cars to the bank. I own my stuff. Why are you going to do it in the first place? Because if you ask me, I don't feel like I own my house. I don't feel like I own my cars. Why? Because, try not paying the taxes on them. If I don't pay the taxes on my house, they take my house. If I lived in an HOA, I don't pay my HOA, they take my house, right? So many different entities out there. They'll just take your stuff. It's egregious. That's why you have an escrow account. When you have a mortgage, they have an escrow account to pay for the taxes and the HOA or whatever else. They put your money in an escrow account. And each year, people have been seeing that escrow account growing more and more, and them taking more and more and more money out of their mortgage. And they're like, wow, yeah, your mortgage didn't go up. The percentage of your mortgage didn't go up, but your taxes and your HOA fees went up. It gets to the point where it goes over their ability to pay that. So then they end up defaulting on that. And whatever else the mortgage company and the local institutions that hold these taxes and HOA fees, they handle all that and remove you from the house. It's terrible. But that's the way that they designed it to happen, so they could take that asset back. Everything is an industrial complex here in the United States. The family industrial complex, everything. So the only way that you can really remove yourself from the influence as much as possible, because you can't, it's very hard to, in short of running off into the woods and going to live in a hut in a national forest, anything beyond that, okay, but normally, even if you have an off-the-grid house, to some sort of degree, we'll have to deal with the system in some sort of way, shape or fashion. But to limit your access and exposure and to limit the leverage they have on you, you have to be financially as free as possible in this world. You have to own your property. Yeah, you got to pay your taxes. It's just the way it is. But if you could find out a system in order to remove yourself from the liability of the system, meaning that you run your own show, you earn your own money, you are an entrepreneur of sorts. If you're growing microgreens or some kind of, or if you're selling livestock or whatever, I don't know. If you're fixing cars, to make money, or fixing up cars and selling them, the list goes on and on and on, that you can earn money. It takes a lot of effort, but you can do it. It took a lot of effort for you to get the job that you're in, doing all the paperwork and, all the resumes and stuff that you had to do that. Many hours dedicated to that. So why can't you use that same, energy and dedication in order to really carve out your own existence? All right, so that's financial freedom, to be able to really have enough money and resources and ability to make money in order to, pay what you have to pay, and have the peace of mind that you can, knowing that you paid everything that you were supposed to pay. Okay, so this is the beginning of the year. Let me pay everything that I have to pay so I can be free and not worry about it until next year. That's financial freedom, to the degree that we're here in this society today. You have enough money to float, and you don't have to worry about next year what's going to happen, because you got enough money on reserve to take care of whatever expenditures that might come from the side unexpectedly or whatever. You never know, but you have the ability to be able to relax and say, well, if that happens, I'll take care of it. I will take care of it. So of course, if you have financial freedom, you're automatically going to have professional freedom. So you have the money and you don't have to worry. Okay, you've got an abundance of money, whatever, because you don't live life, to the margins from parameters that they set before you to live, and to go into debt and everything like that. And you're not materialistic. Okay, you don't have that materialistic mindset. You can wear regular clothes. I think I bought this from Kroger, probably about a year ago, this shirt. It's a nice white shirt. I like to wear it in the summertime so the sun doesn't directly shine on me. Wear a straw hat, whatever, I'm not at that place where I have to be trendy anymore, being a half a century. I don't have to do that. I'm about living life and being practical. And this is what a lot of people need to do now. It is no longer a want, it's a necessity to do that. And, stop trying to pay attention to all those people that are famous, creating trends and setting trends for you, extracting you from your wealth. That's all it does. And your time, because your time is worth more than wealth ever will be. Your time is worth everything, okay? Your time is worth everything. I just, want you to understand that. It's not the money, it's your time. And you only have a finite amount of it, and it's very precious. And you have to live life free as much as possible, so you can be as happy as you possibly can be, content, and live a very meaningful life. Having meaning in your life is very important. I can't say that enough. I can't emphasize that enough. And if you have time freedom, you have the ability to do that. And if you have time freedom, you most likely have location freedom also. If you have personal freedom, you have financial freedom, and then you have professional freedom. Professional freedom, you will have the ability to pick and choose how you go about earning a living, how you go about, getting the resources to trade. Okay. Whatever that looks like. It could be bartering in your area. A lot of people in these areas, they barter. They have a barter system. The system doesn't like that. They want trade, and they want you to have to, pay a fee to transfer titles over, and, money so you could get taxed. That's not how a lot of people are doing things in certain areas. They barter. Bartering. I love bartering because it takes them out of the equation. And if you can get yourself in a situation where you're trading abilities, you're trading time, abilities, and energy. And what I mean by that is, your neighbor needs a fence, but he's not good at carpentry. He's better at, fixing tractors. So you say, hey, look, if you fix my tractor, I'll build your fence. That kind of thing. The system doesn't like that, but in the country and a lot of places in rural areas, that's how they do things. That's how they get by. And it's a very smart way to get by as well. You know, so professional freedom, having the ability to say, look, I'm not going to do something that I don't agree with morally. So all those people that say, well, I'm just doing my job, and I spoke about that in previous videos, just doing your job. Oh, I'm just doing my job. You know, oh, I know that person got screwed over by our system, but I had to screw them over because I'm just doing my job. I was told to do that, by the way. You know, it's how I earn a living. So that's just the collateral damage that is done. No, you're selling your soul, essentially. You're essentially selling your soul, and that's not the great way to go about that. To live your life having to screw other people over, like being a police officer pulling people over because they were going a couple of miles over the speed limit. So you've got to meet quota. You've got to meet that quota so you can get promoted. So it's a numbers game. And if you ask that person, why did you pull that person over? Well, he was going a couple of miles over the speed limit. Yeah, but I mean, did you really have to? Well, yeah, I had to meet my quota. I'm just doing my job. I was told to do that. So, and look, we do need police, and I'm not saying if you're a police officer, that's a bad thing. But if you don't agree with that, if you're perfectly fine with that, that's okay. If you like pulling people over and giving them speeding tickets, I guess you're in the right job. And I don't know too many people that would be comfortable knowing that they let somebody die because they they hit the hammer on the gavel, so to speak, and denied somebody their health care benefits that paid into their health care benefits for quite a long time, but this surgery or this medication would save their life, and you said, well, we're denying you. We're going to deny you your health benefits here, and so they end up dying, and like, wow, this person died. Yeah, we had to deny them. I was just doing my job. You're selling your soul. I don't see where any circumstance while doing that, working for an insurance company, denying people's claims, will be a good thing and have good energy on you. It won't. So professional freedom is the ability to say, like, this doesn't align with my moral standards and beliefs. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave and do something that is more meaningful and fulfilling to me. So that's the PFPs in a nutshell, guys. I know it's kind of long and drawn out, but I really want to dive deep into it a little bit, and I'm going to go further into more of a put together video and more descriptive on it, and sort of like a textbook sense with the PFPs. I'll probably do some shorts on it as well, but that's pretty much it, guys. And thank you for being here at the end. I know it was kind of a long video, but thank you for still being here if you're here. And, give me a like and subscribe to my channel. Would be nice. And maybe one day I'll just do this, full time. And we'll have a chat. And I can really impart my knowledge and wisdom that I've been told, that I've been given through the years. So, thank you very much, guys.